Okay people, check this out. In my last video, I made some simple coat hangers out of the worst parts of the skateboards, which are the hardware pieces. In this video, I'm going to use the same material and make a really trippy, lazy Susan. So, here I have some laminated blocks of hardware pieces. 3 of them are halves with different color variations, and 1 of them is a full block of just blank colors. Go watch the last video if you missed out on how I laminated these blocks. Now, in order to get the most out of these blocks, I need to resaw them into thin veneers, roughly 3/16 inch thick, so that I can sand it down to its final thickness at about 1/8 of an inch. So I'm cutting up the full block in half and then setting the fence to trim off the ends for all 5 of these half blocks. And then I could start resawing veneers. When I'm resawing, I'm using a 1-inch bandsaw blade with 1 TPI, which stands for tooth per inch. This specific blade I'm using is very cheap. It's under $25 from Grizzly, and it's a throwaway blade. I tried different blades like the carbide tips and other premium blades, but they all get pretty dull quickly. I'm not sure, but the blade might be getting gunked up with glue since all these skateboards have glue between the veneers and making it dull. One of the downsides of using a coarse blade like this is that you won't get a smooth finish on the face. Usually a little rough, and you could clearly see the tooling marks. And you will need to run it through the drum sander, which takes time and material away. But I broke enough blades to know that this is actually faster and much more consistent, and actually safe as well. Also, I'm keeping all the veneers in order so that I can match them later when I'm creating the pattern. Now, once I have all the veneers and sanded down to the same thickness using the drum sander, I can start cutting these veneers into shape. I'm using my X-Tool P2 CO2 laser to do this since these veneers are extremely thin and fragile, and they would most likely get destroyed by a table saw or the CNC machine. In order to get the most out of these veneers, I'm cutting them into triangles. Each sheet took about a minute or 2 to cut, and all I had to do was replace the veneers and press a few buttons, and it was done. If you're interested in the X-Tool lasers, make sure to use the link in the description below and get a nice little discount. Once all the veneers have been lasered, I had to do a little bit of cleanup. Some of these veneers didn't get cut all the way through, and some of the veneers had some weak spots. So I had to fix a few of the veneers with CA glue. I'm also making sure to keep all the triangles in order so they fit nicely later. And if you notice, I'm so anal that I didn't want to waste the offcut, so I cut out a small triangle at the ends, and I'll be making one out of that too, so stay tuned. It's hard to see on camera, but there's a little bit of fibers sticking out of the edges, and it's creating a gap when I join them together. So I had to do a little bit of quick sanding to get the edges nice and straight so they all fit nicely together with no gaps. Now here's what I'm doing to create a pattern. I have a stack of triangles that are exactly the same. I even made sure that they're in order so I could book match them and turn them into hexagons. And I'm just using blue tape to temporarily hold them together. And I could do this for the rest of the triangles. This actually took about a half day to do, and it's a small task like this that I always underestimate. Up until this point, I actually don't know what I'm going to make. I was contemplating if I should turn it into a wall art or a big table, but the pattern that I was creating was so chaotic and trippy like a kaleidoscope that I thought it would be really cool if it was able to spin. And that's why I'm turning it into a lazy Susan. So here's the final pattern that I decided on. I have 1 blank hexagon in the middle with 6 different hexagons surrounding it. And since the final shape will be a circle, I needed to fill the edges, so I'm using 2 more blank hexagons to fill up the edges. And this is all being held up by blue tape for now, and it'll be glued onto a piece of plywood later. And here's the pattern. It's hard to see since there's all the laser burn marks, but once it's all sanded down and finished, the pattern will really stand out. And here's me thinking about turning these into a big dining table. But since I decided to make a lazy Susan instead, I bought a sheet of 1/2-inch Baltic birch plywood and started breaking them down into size. And once I have the plywood broken down, I could start laminating them together using my vacuum bag. This vacuum bag works pretty decent for its price, but it gets punctured pretty easily. But you could also repair it pretty easily by using some gum tape that's provided. So I kind of abuse this bag. The vacuum is from Rockler, which is more than enough for what I do in the shop. And just in case there's a hole in the bag, I let the vacuum run for about an hour or two. And the next day I could take it out of the bag, and I made a mistake of either using too much glue or not covering the entire face with blue tape, so ultimately I ruined one of these lazy Susans. I'm just glad only one of them got ruined. In order to cut these into a perfect circle, I found the center and drew a circle and then cut to the line as close as I can with the jigsaw, and some of the skateboard pieces came apart because the blade was too aggressive. And then I realized I have a CNC machine, so I just used that to cut out a perfect circle. And quick shout out to Onefinity. This CNC machine is amazing, and a lot of you said it'll break down after a few years if I have the CNC machine in this orientation. And I just want to say, you were wrong, yet again. After it's been cut out on the CNC machine, I could cut the tabs off and clean it up with the flush trim bit. And I could also clean up the one that I cut with the jigsaw using the circle as my template. Now, when it comes to woodworking, one thing you should always try to avoid is showing the plywood edges. So I need to frame the circle somehow. And I initially thought about making a segmented ring out of walnut and fitting the Lazy Susan in. But I wanted to try something new and use skateboard veneer strips and do a bent lamination. So I cut out some 3/4 inch strips out of this black skateboard veneer, and I also cut out a form on the CNC machine off camera. I just quickly sand down the edges smooth to get rid of any tooling marks and then fit the strip of black veneer in between the circle and the form. I clamp it down and mark the halfway point and take it off the clamps and trim it down. To make this lamination go quicker, and since I only made one form and the veneer is so thin, I decided to use CA glue. I think CA glue is extremely strong and should hold up as long as wood glue, if not more. Also, shout out to TOTALBOAT for coming out with their own CA glue. Use the link in the description below to get a nice little discount from TOTALBOAT. I can then put the strip back into the form and clamp it down for a few minutes. Next, I can glue the other half by butting it up one end and clamping it down to see where I need to trim off. I then trim it off and apply CA glue and clamp it down for a few minutes. This took about 10 minutes for each of these circles, which is pretty quick and fast. And I purposely made the strips a little wider so that I could make the glue up easier and I could just trim them flush with the hand plane. I rarely use the hand plane since most of the materials that I work with is some type of plywood, whether it's Baltic birch or my own recycled skateboard veneers, but it was really nice using this hand plane for this application. And once I have it nice and flush, I can start the finishing process by sanding and putting a soft round over it. And as for the finish, I'm using Rubio Monocoat, which I think is the most durable oil finish that I've used so far. It's literally designed for flooring. And plus, it's so easy to apply. It's just a wipe on, wipe off finish. It's super durable, waterproof, and I personally really like the satin finish that I get. Okay, so here it is, a Lazy Susan made out of the worst part of the recycled skateboards. I try my best to match these veneers so there's a sense of purpose to this design instead of just slapping on a bunch of skateboards together. I installed these Lazy Susan hardware that I got from Amazon, but these can be easily removed and you could always use it as a top for a nightstand or a coffee table. The choice is up to you. I'm really happy how it turned out, and I'm very happy that I'm able to turn one of the worst parts of the skateboards and turn it into a functional product. And that's it for this video. If you haven't already, make sure to like this video, hit that subscribe button, and comment down below what I should make next out of the worst part of the skateboards. Thanks again, and until next time. Bye.